on Cougars Daily, the BYU football schedule. We're going to break it down. We're going to tell you which games BYU should probably win pretty easily. Where are those sneaky trap games? What game does BYU really need to show up for? And do they need a miracle if they hope to make the college football playoff? We're going to talk about that and much more on today's show. Hello, and welcome to today's episode. I'm your host, Adam Gibby. Thank you for joining us today. Do me a huge favor, like, subscribe to the video. Helps us to be able to grow the channel, be able to reach more people, and really talk about the topics that matter most around college football, especially around BYU. And today we're going to break down the schedule. And like I said in the open, I want to tell you where all of these games are in terms of, are they easy? Are they trap? Does BYU just need to show up and play their game? And do they actually need a miracle? The answer is yes. I'm going to tell you why here in a minute. But first, let's talk about the easy games. The first one's very obvious, Utah Tech. BYU should absolutely take care of Utah Tech. They're an FCS school. It's the first week of the season. Hopefully we're not seeing the starters in the second half of this game at all. The next one is Colorado State. Now, some people might say, well, it's a road game. You get kind of weird. Colorado State's not a very good team. In fact, they're a really, really bad team. It didn't bring in a ton of talent in the transfer portal. Now they are in the Pac-12. They obviously are going to have this game circled. It's on CBS. So it's a big opportunity for Colorado State. That being said, BYU is the better team. You just line them up across the board. BYU should win this game very convincingly, and it should be over very early. The last game that I really consider to be a quote-unquote easy game is Iowa State. Now, I understand it's a conference game. You can never sleep on a conference opponent. Okay? You should never do that. It's a dumb idea. However, BYU took care of Iowa State pretty convincingly last year, won by, I believe it was 2 or 3 scores. That was in Ames, Iowa. That was before Matt Campbell left. That was before their entire roster left to Penn State. Iowa State's in a pretty rough spot right now, and I would be absolutely shocked if this game was close late, especially because it's in LaVell Edwards Stadium. It's on a Friday night. LaVell Edwards Stadium, Friday night game. I mean, that's a recipe for success for the Cougars. Now let's get into these trap games. Now, a trap game is, at least for me, what it means is these are teams that BYU should beat. They're certainly more talented than these teams. However, because of where they fall in the schedule, it could get weird very quickly. And if it gets weird, anything can happen. And the first one is UCF. If you open up a dictionary right now, I don't know if those still exist, but if you open up an old dictionary and you look up the word trap game, the definition will say BYU versus UCF 2026. This is the game right after Notre Dame. It is no secret that the Notre Dame game is the biggest game LaVell Edwards Stadium in at least 30 years since they played Miami. This game is massive. There is a world where BYU and Notre Dame are both undefeated going into it. If that happens, we're looking at like a 3 versus 5 matchup. The winner of that game probably goes all the way up to number 2 or 3 in the rankings. They're living on cloud nine, especially for BYU if they won this game. And then they have to get on a plane, travel all the way to Orlando where it's hot and humid, and play very pesky defense of UCF. And I believe they'll have a better offense. This just feels like the kind of game that BYU rolls in. They're feeling great. They're feeling excited. They've been celebrating all week. First play of the game, pick 6. UCF up 7-0. Second possession, 3 and out. UCF gets the ball, moves down the field, kicks field goals, 10-0 going into the second quarter. Now we've got ourselves a game. This is, again, the definition of a trap game. The next trap game is Baylor. And for similar reasons, but not quite the same extent, it's after the Utah game. So BYU and Utah, the Holy War, obviously huge, massive game, huge implications. It's hard to come off of that game, win or lose, with a lot of motivation. And it's very possible that at this point, Baylor is 4-5, 3-6, probably not feeling so great. And BYU may just not want to play them. Okay, it's kind of like just as an example, real life example, mowing the lawn. Most of the time, mowing the lawn's fine. Who cares? It's kind of relaxing, actually. But if you get a big promotion at work, or if you, land a big deal, whatever it is, and then you come home, you're all excited, and you're pumped up, and you're like, oh, I gotta mow the yard. You don't really want to do it anymore. It's not so fun. It's not exciting. I could see Baylor being that in this situation for BYU. You just beat Utah, and you got to go home and play Baylor. And Dave Aranda's a good coach. He has won big games. So this is, again, by definition, a trap game. The last one is Cincinnati. And Cincinnati is interesting in that it's the last game of the season. If BYU already has clinched a spot in the Big 12 championship game, or they know that they're going, the college football playoff, whatever. We saw this happen last year, actually, against UCF. BYU went into that game. Oh, we're already going in. And, you just going, I don't really want to get hurt today. Maybe we don't want to show any new trick plays. We just want to keep things kind of vanilla and just kind of start working towards the Big 12 championship. Well, you got to play Cincinnati first. And last year, BYU played UCF. They got down 10-0 early, and it got very weird quickly. Now, BYU did recover. They end up blowing out the Knights. But for a minute there, it was weird. Okay? Cincinnati, same thing could happen. Now, in terms of trap games, this one is far and away the third option. But again, it is a trap game. It is a game that I believe if it was in a different spot in the season, I'm not worried about it. It's probably in the easy category. But because it is the last game and there is potential of that Big 12 championship, it certainly could get weird. Now let's go into the games BYU needs to show up for. These are games that, again, I believe BYU is the better team here, but they may not be the overwhelming favorites. Okay, these are the kind of games that if BYU shows up and plays a B-plus game, Arizona shows up and plays a B-plus game, BYU probably wins the game. But if BYU plays a B-minus game and Arizona plays a B-plus game, now things are going to get very weird. Could come down to who has the ball last, who, avoids a critical turnover, whatever. And BYU could very easily lose those games. Okay, and like I mentioned, the first one's Arizona. I don't like the placement of this on the schedule. Arizona is just, it's week 2. Okay, I think that the defense, yes, Papinga came from this system, but he's going to have different looks. He's going to have a different scheme. Okay, will BYU's defense be ready by week 2? BYU is replacing basically their whole receiving room, wide receivers and tight ends. A lot of talent there, but does Bachmeier already know his first, second, third read? Do the receivers know all of their routes? Okay, week 2, normally you're still kind of working those things out. Offensive line, same thing. Few transfers from some Power 4 schools. The talent is there. No question, by week 5, week 6, they will be a very, very dangerous offensive line. But will they be in week 2? BYU's got to show up. Next one's TCU. TCU went 9-4 last year. I don't have any reason to believe they're going to be any worse this year. Listen, I don't care if you're Georgia, Alabama, Michigan, Ohio State. Maybe Indiana from last year's the exception. If you're going on the road, you're playing a 9-win caliber team, you got to show up. If you don't play up to their level or better, you're not winning that game. Okay, so again, BYU's got to show up to that one. The next one's Arizona State. I'm not really sure what to make of Arizona State. I think they could certainly be a good team. I love Dillingham as a coach. He gets the best out of his players. But I'm not sure, again, where Arizona State's going to be. They don't have Sam Levitt. He went to LSU. Jordan Tyson's not walking back through the door, thank goodness. So I don't really know the weapons that Arizona State has. It is a home game again for BYU. But just knowing Dillingham, knowing the kind of upsets he's pulled off. Remember, Arizona State beat Texas Tech last year. They're certainly capable of pulling off an upset. So if BYU doesn't show up to that one, forget it. All right, the next one's interesting. And if you know BYU's schedule really well, you're probably wondering why this team wasn't on one of those early categories. It's Kansas. Now, Kansas clearly isn't a trap game. It's not in a spot to be a trap game. I did debate putting them on the easy side, on the easy category. However, BYU's never beaten Kansas, well, as a member of the Big 12. In fact, if you remember 2 years ago, and I apologize ahead of time, I should put a little warning across the screen that says warning, alert. BYU was 9-0. They were undefeated, ranked number 6, I believe, in the college football playoff rankings. Winning the game in the fourth quarter. Granted, it was a close game, but winning the game. BYU forces Kansas to punt. Jalen Daniels takes the punt. It's a pooch punt. It's probably the worst punt I've ever seen. Well, pretty close. It doesn't go that way, straight. It goes that way. And it hits a BYU player in the helmet. Hits the ground. Kansas recovers, scores a touchdown, wins the game. Again, I'm sorry, BYU fans, for that. There's a lot of guys on the team who remember that. LJ Martin, one of them. They're going to remember that game. And if Kansas, for whatever reason, shows up, scores a couple touchdowns early, it's up 14-0 in the first quarter, I could see some of those emotions starting to creep back into the team. Is this really happening again? Are we seriously going to lose to Kansas again? Are they seriously going to derail our season again? And when that happens, all bets are off. So for that reason, Kansas absolutely is in the show-up category. The last team is Utah. I mean, do I even need to say it? The Holy War. It's in Salt Lake. I don't care what the records are. I don't care that every indicator says that BYU is the better team. I don't care if you look at the rosters. I don't care how you line it up. Kalani's been coach for 10 plus years. Morgan Scalley's being the first time ever head coach. Does not matter. Records do not matter in this game. Never have, probably never will. You have to show up if you're BYU, if you expect to win this game. Utah is not going to forget what happened 2 years ago. Listen, as a diehard BYU fan, I can't believe what happened 2 years ago. That holding call going down the field for what seemed like the first time all game, kicking the game-winning field goal as time expired. What a game. They are not going to forget that in Rice-Eccles Stadium. They're going to be loud. They're going to be excited, and it's going to be a crazy game. If BYU doesn't show up and play their A game, because Utah will, the 3-game win streak comes to an end. Now we need to talk about the last game. Now, if you're a BYU fan, you know exactly which game I'm talking about. It's the Notre Dame game. This game is a huge opportunity for BYU. This is perhaps, like I mentioned before, the biggest game in LaVell Edwards Stadium since Miami over 30 years ago. To this point, BYU has not been able to win the big game. There's been a lot of curses for BYU. They weren't able to win on the East Coast. Remember a few years ago, they lost games to like UCF when they were in the American, South Florida, East Carolina. They lost a game, I believe, at UMass. For whatever reason, BYU on the East Coast was not a thing. That was Coastal Carolina. Sorry for those memories, too. They couldn't win those games. But then they broke that streak. People don't really talk about it anymore. Another one was primetime day games, or big network day games, I should say. Again, BYU really struggled. They were great at night, and fans dreaded playing in the middle of the day. Again, BYU broke that streak. We don't really talk about it anymore. The one thing we do still talk about, can BYU win the big game? Can they pull off the miracle? Are they able to get the monkey off their back? And they have an opportunity against Notre Dame. It's a home game. I hope it's at night. I don't think it will be, but I hope it's at night. If they win this game, the perception around BYU changes. The perception around the Big 12 changes. Now, BYU is a real contender. They're not just a team. Can they make the playoff? Can they make it to the quarterfinals? Can they make it to the semifinals? If they get the right draw, could they win the whole thing or play for the championship? That's the world that the BYU will enter if they pull off this win. But they need to pull off the win. And if they don't, they need to find a way to get to the Big 12 championship and then pull off that win. Because last year, they had 2 marquee games, they lost both of them by a lot. Both against Texas Tech. I happen to believe it was more of a matchup problem as opposed to a talent problem. I do believe BYU was a playoff caliber team. I think just Texas Tech was a terrible matchup. If BYU can win either of those games, Notre Dame, Big 12 championship, again, the perception completely changes, and it would be massive, massive for BYU. So just in review, again, looking at all of these games, your easy games, I got Utah Tech, Colorado State, Iowa State, The games that are trap games, UCF, Baylor, and Cincinnati. The games BYU needs to show up for, Arizona, TCU, Arizona State, Kansas, and Utah. And then, of course, you have Notre Dame and you have the Big 12 championship potentially. But let me know what you think. Leave a comment. Again, if you do me a huge favor, like and subscribe. It means a ton. I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.